Uh, so my name is Pallavi, and today I will be presenting on Hariti. So if I can just share my screen, I will be speaking on Demoness Hariti, a mythology, art, and dissemination in South and Southeast Asia. Now we are all familiar with Hariti. Like just before the lunch, we were introduced to her again, thanks to Chaitanya sir, and we are aware that she is regarded as the mother of demons. She is the goddess of fertility as well as that of smallpox. She is one of the most commonly occurring female deities in the Gandharan art. In fact, she's the second most represented figure in Gandharan art next to Buddha. She's mostly depicted with children, sometimes from a single child to 5 or 10, 7, and symbolically, she is the mother of 100, 500, or 1,000, depending on the text that we are referring to. Uh, in the Vinay Pitaka, she is referred to her name as Vinashi, which means joy. And she is the consort of the chief of Kuber, Panchashika, and is known as Mahayakshini. He represents the enduring tenacity, basically, of the pre-Buddhist Yaksha cult or pre-Buddhist folk deities as it continues into the mainstream Buddhism. Now, the mythology of Hariti is quite popular. The story is that in a previous birth, when Huan Shi was pregnant, she was made to dance by a few people or by a certain class of people, and due to which she miscarried and lost her child. This enraged her, and she promised to take her revenge um, on in her next life upon the same people who had caused her this mishap. She promised that in the next life she would take revenge by eating the children of the city. The city is mostly referred to as Rajgriha, and this is where she encounters Buddha, and we see her transition. It is said that as a Yakshini, as married to Panchashika, she had 500 children together, which led to her also be known as Bhutamata, or the mother of demons. And even though she had 500 children, she was benevolent towards them. It's the children of the other people towards whom she was a malevolent goddess. And it's their children that she would be stealing, hence getting the name of Hariti. Now, upon meeting Buddha, when Buddha was approached by the village people about uh, these demonic occurrences that were happening with Hariti, stealing the children or devouring them, Buddha decided to teach her or to help her understand her mistakes. And he did so by going to her house when she was not there and hiding, and the youngest child of Hariti, whose name is referred to as Pingala or Priyankara. And then he went back to his monastery and hid this young child under his begging board. Hariti, once she realized that her favorite child or the youngest child was missing, she decided she actually went mad. She wasn't sure what happened. It was an emotion she wasn't ready to deal with. And she ended up going to Buddha himself to ask for his help. Thereupon, Buddha explained that if she was feeling this scared and worried, then the plight of these parents of whose children that she was devouring would have been worse. So she learned her mistake, she learned her lessons, and in this manner, Buddha transitioned her from being that of an ogress or being a demonic deity into a figure who is a mother goddess, who is a faithful Yakshini in Buddhism, and she highlights the teachings of Buddha. She promised in return for Pingala being returned to her that she would not be eating any more children, that she would be faithful to the religion, and she would protect the children, in fact. Just in return, the monastic people would have to provide her with food and offering because that is her sustenance. Otherwise, how would she be surviving? There are different versions of the story. Certain versions mention that she had 500 sons. Certain mention that she had 1,000 or even 10,000 in the Chinese versions. And we have have the Hariti Chutra, which mentions that she had 500 sons in the first half, like 6 months of the year, and then 500 sons in the later half of the year. Now, of course, these are mythological stories, but the idea of abundance, the idea of motherhood was instilled into her even in her ogress or in a demonic phase. And the fact that we get so many variations in the story with the number of children, the episodes, the dealing with Buddha, it gives us an idea that she must have been a folk deity, which is why there are so many variations in her story. Now, Hariti is most popular, as I mentioned, in the Gandharan School of Art. And in her iconography, we often find the concepts or the symbolisms which are familiar in the Greco Roman as well as in the Indo Iranian School of Art, especially with her holding the cornucopia. Now, this is an item which is very popular with the Indo-Greek goddesses or Greek and Roman goddesses. And the first image or the earliest image of Hariti comes from an Indo-Scythian period from Sirkap in Taxila Valley, where she is presented in a similar iconography, which suggests that from the very start, her image was uh, based upon the images, previous existing images of the Greek, Roman, as well as local. Another text, which is the Kriya Samagraha Panchika, mentions that Hariti is actually an unique figure. And even though she is coming up as an independent goddess, a mother goddess in Gandhar, towards Ajanta, Ellora, her sculptures and her association with Panchashika, and this combined couple image that we are finding is highlighted more in the text. So she is not coming as an individual goddess initially in the text. She is a consort or the wife or the Mahayakshini to Panchashikha or Kuber. And in this text, it's often referred that she is keeping company to the Raja being Kuber, and by that default meaning, then she is a queen because she is someone of a royal line. She is a royal goddess. And this lends to her Gandharan iconography, where she's taking these icons, the symbolisms from these goddesses like Sibyl, Isis, Fortuna, Tyche, others who have symbolisms regarded as related to that of a queen or related to that of royalty. Hariti in her maternal role is often focused, irrespective of the fact that there are variations in her iconography. It is a maternal role with either a single child present or multiple children present that highlights her, which helps us identify her as Hariti. Uh, in the earlier phases, especially in Gandhar, we do see her holding a cornucopia, but later on, it is mainly the child which identifies her. The Chitrakarna Karma section of the Kriya Samagraha Panchika gives us more idea as to this relationship of a mother, a wife, goddess-like figure, where it's mentioned that she should be seated like a Yakshini in Lalitasan with a bejeweled seat, and that her complexion is reddish white, and there is beauty in her face. So initially, even though she is regarded as an ogress, as a demonic form, in sculpture she is depicted as a beautiful mother goddess. And the text all refer to that. It talks that she's adorned in different types of ornaments. In her hand, she has her prized or her favorite child, Priyankara, who's also sometimes jeweled. Like he might have a necklace or he might have a crown. Um, and this is how the Mahayakshini Hariti should be normally depicted. The Nishpanna Yoga Valley text refers that Hariti is always Putra, that is always with her son. And this suggests that the main iconography, irrespective of her other identities and mythologies, was that of a mother. In Gandhar, the Indo-Greek, Indo-Scythian, as well as Indo-Parthian coins and sculptures do give us a syncretic iconography for Hariti, especially with the features of Greek Tyche as well as Roman Fortuna. Uh, their identities of Tyche and Fortuna as goddesses of fertility as well as fortune is represented in Hariti as well as the goddess of fertility and married to the god of wealth or fortune. And that extends to her functions as well. In certain cases, especially from Kushan period onwards, her iconography is similar, if not more or less same in certain cases, with that of the Iranian goddess of Ardosho and the Hindu goddess of Sri Lakshmi. I apologize. Um, her connections are to the other goddesses like Sibyl, Nana that I've mentioned, suggest that at least in the Gandharan region, we have a kind of syncretic relation happening where we have pre-existing molds, basically, pre-existing ideas of images about how these concepts should be represented. And Hariti is basically taking up these kind of symbolisms, these kinds of molds present, and is being represented in that manner. The visualizations then are also similar to that of Sibyl, Nana, the Egyptian goddess Isis, Tyche, and also to the cult of Patini, which just before lunch we discussed a bit. We were fortunate enough to see that. Now, as I keep mentioning, it is a child which is making us identify um, Hariti. And this child is mostly depicted on her left side, reaching or latched to her left breast, sometimes reaching towards her necklace, never to her hair, never to her face. It's like the child is attracted to the bejeweled or the shiny necklace around her neck and is happy to play with that. And towards the later phase, when we're moving towards Mathuran art, we are finding this cornucopia as well as these um, Indo-Greek as well as Roman depictions being replaced, and we are finding the cornucopia being replaced by that of a citrus fruit, a different type of citrus fruit. Sometimes the pomegranate, sometimes the grapes, mostly grapes, as is visible in this image, where Hariti is presented again barefoot, seated with a lot of children in her arms, in her lap, on her shoulders, and the imagery of the pomegranate or the citrus fruit is to show that of fertility. Again, the image or the idea of motherhood is being shared or put forward. The iconography of Hariti is actually important in relationship with Panchashika and Kuber as well, because she is the mother of the demons as well. She is the queen of the demons. But at the same time, irrespective of them, these children being demons, she is a loving mother figure that is being represented. She does not look like a demon in spite of her being a demon mother. And this mostly has to do with the fact that her image is being brought from the Iranian deities of Pharaoh and Ardaksho or from Kuber and Lakshmi. And this is lending to her imagery of a benevolent goddess. Uh, the transition of Pantashika along with Hariti is visible in the sculptures as well, especially when we move from Gandharan towards later Mathura style, where we have the mustache or the beard being replaced, we have a pot-bellied Kuber or Panchashika being represented, and we have a more Indianized feature in these sculptures. What does continue, however, are the again the presence of the children, of course, and the jewelry. So Hariri continues to be heavily ornamented with necklaces, earrings, headdresses, but sometimes, and mostly in case of Mathura sculptures, bare feet. She is mostly seen wearing two necklaces, one small and broader, which is referred to as the Grayavaka, and a long beaded one with a pendant, which is falling down between her breast, which is the necklace that we normally see Pingala playing with. Uh, in the Mathuran period, this heavy ornamentation of Hariti continues in the iconography. The Sadhanmala text is referring to Hariti as Yaksheswari and the eliminator of all sins. So there is a transition in the story as we have seen, as we have discussed previously, but even in the iconography where she is no longer the perpetrator. She's not the one committing any sin, but she's preventing that. And the people and the lady praying to her for prevention of smallpox or prevent or for protection of children is something which is coming to the forefront. The monk, I think, when in the 7th century he was visiting Gandhar and region, mentions the ceremony of consecrating images of Hariti in the porch or the dining room, which is a reference to the story where we had Buddha say that the monastery would be feeding him, would be feeding her, would be providing her with sustenance. Um, the importance, this is something most studies have referred to, is that we have numerous actually images of Hariti in Gandhar and region. Now, of course, this is just from the amount of work that has been done till now. This is just from the amount of sculptures which have been found till now. It does not mean that by default that Hariti was popular in Gandhar. It's just the availability of these sculptures in the region suggests. Upon further excavations and further finds, this is likely to change as well. But the another cause for in Gandhar for Hariti's popularity is that she didn't have any other goddess figure she was competing with ideally. I apologize. Other than a doctor, Hariti was a sole goddess mother-like figure which was present, and it's the predispositions of a doctor's iconography which continues into her iconography, as I've mentioned already. Huan San records a stupa which was built by Ashoka and Peshwar to Hariti in honor of Hariti, where offerings and sacrifices are made for child protection, for fertility, reasons by couples as well as families, even in present day. And this suggests that she has been an important deity to the laity since that time till present in the area. In fact, the name Hariti was sanctified or accepted very soon, irrespective of the meaning that it had, that she's a stealer or she's someone taking away a child. In one of the reliquary that we are finding in a stupa, it mentions the relic of Hariti Putra, a Buddhist teacher who was contemporary to Ashoka. So the fact that you have teacher monks taking up names like Hariti Putra suggests about her inclusivity in the Buddhist pantheon. Buddhist deities often are clubbed together. In case of Hariti, since she is a demon goddess, since she is Rakshasa, but she has been converted through the teachings of Buddha, is often regarded or kind of combined together with the other Yaksha figures like that of Chandika, Chandalika, and others, where they are prayed to prevent and to protect the Supa, and hence they are put forward in the entrance as Yakshas and Yakshinis. It's from these periods onward that we also see her association um, in healing diseases. So when she is turning to a protective goddess, she is also identified in a similar role of that of Shitala. This popularity of Hariti to become a goddess of like a protector of smallpox has to do with the outburst of smallpox incidents that happened in Roman Empire, Kushan, along the Silk Route, basically around the 2nd century, and this actually led to her more popular her growth in popularity. If I just kind of move forward, chronography of Hariti is not quite fixed, as you have been seeing, as and I've been mentioning. It's just that her identity with the child is something that has been um, more or less um, uh, guided on, but whether it's a seated position, whether she's in association with Panchashika, she's standing, barefoot, the jewelry, the dressing, it's not as fixed as we see with Buddha and Bodhisattva. And this shows that it is actually bringing in a lot of folk mythologies, folk understanding readings, and multiple religions feeding into her cult. Another text, which is the Hariti Sutra, gives us an idea about how Hariti should be prayed to. And in this text, it mentions that these women who wants to conceive should make a painting of her as a beautiful woman. But while doing so, they should concentrate the land. They should meditate in a quiet room. They should perform a lot of rules and regulation. Keep themselves clean. Drink certain food. Drink certain um, items like ashes, flowers, milk, etc. And then pray by pronouncing the mantra, and do this for around 1,000 times or so to be able to be blessed by Hariti. And the fact that there are certain rituals like these being mentioned suggests how popular and how solidified slowly her cult was becoming. Certain offerings mentioned in these rituals have also been that of meat, continues with the idea that even when she has been transitioned, that she did have that cannibalistic past, and that is why meat, when offered to her, is likely to get you a better result than just giving her vegetarian options. Um, Hariti has been referred to in these texts like Nishpanaya Gavali and Shadanamala as a yakshini of unparalleled beauty, and her name then referred to is as Abhirati. And this also refers to her as a mother goddess, nature as mother goddess, not just of demons or yakshini, but just a simple mother goddess that we refer to in the mainstream religion. The reason that her role is important, her role as a laywoman, because she was a laywoman, irrespective of her being a yakshi or a cannibalistic woman, and then turning into a protectoress of children, is important, especially to the Buddhist audience or the Buddhist laity of women, because initially the idea that to join Buddhism, they would have to renounce their families, leave behind their families, break away from their marriages, leave behind their children, and then take up monastic vows, was a bit burdensome for them. Not bit, but quite burdensome to these people. Which, and with a figure like Hariti who continued with her motherhood, who is giving basically a sanction, Buddha's sanction on motherhood, suggests that it was easier for these female laity to join into the religion of Buddhism. There was a way for them to continue with both identities of joining up, becoming a Buddhist, as well as continuing as a wife or a mother. These images of Hariti, which are assumed as local folk deities, which were kind of taken up into the mainstream religion, suggest that uh, Buddhism, to function and make itself accessible to its laity, to its local um, people, had to prevent these kind of malevolent creatures, like the figures, to return to the malevolence activity, because that is exactly where Buddhism functions. That is where the conversion comes in. It's because of the teachings of Buddha. It's because of the knowledge that he's propounding that we see this transition. And even figures like Hariti cannot go back to their old ways once they have been enlightened, once they have been taught the right path. One point I would like to point out is that there have been stories and mythologies of transition that we see in case of Hariti, especially similar with that of Naga, um, like Naga figures as well as other Yaksha and Yakshini figures. Particularly in the case of Hariti, we see her quickly and very fast becoming part of the main Buddhist mythology and pantheon. He's no longer an outsider who is being built into the or being transplanted into the religion, but she's in fact part of the religion. She is exactly the epitome of what is being taught. And as opposed to the others, these yakshis and like Naga figures who continue to be at the periphery, who are just slowly getting their entry into the religion, Hariti has become the best example, which is why she's so popular even for scholarly work, to understand exactly how Buddhism worked with the laity. I realize I do not have much time, so I'll kind of go a bit fast. I have a couple of images before I show a bit of our expansion into subject. Asia. So Hariti's story is something that has been kind of copied or replicated multiple times. The idea of changing basically spirits, evil spirits, or folk deities, um, and turning them to Buddhist semi spirits again, like they continued in their form of spirits, is important. And this is important because even in story of Hariti, we find a continuation of giving offerings. Initially, when she was in her ogress form, um, offerings would be given to her to appease her, to keep her away. And now, when she's part of the pantheon, offerings still continue to be given to her, not as a concession anymore, but as a part of this entire religious tradition which is there, which is offering or acknowledging her role as a protector, which is a new role in the religion. This kind of transition is also highlighting the negotiation basically which is happening between the laity and the religion. It is showing that these people who believed in a figure like this, who would be causing harm to their children, to their family, would continue, would prefer to actually keep giving um, um, offerings to her and not spite her irrespective of the transition. And this has to be factored in into the religion. This is why we are getting this kind of an equation where initially it was just the layman giving it to the deity, but now we have the Sangha, the Buddhist Sangha performing the same on behalf of the laity and appeased by the offerings, the deities are protecting the laity. So it's kind of a triangular network that comes in place. Finally, we see that uh, these ideas, these kind of inclusions of the periphery people, these nuns, these monks, these female laity, is actually highlighting the relation between the community as well as we see in the scholarly work. The process of this kind of domestication, this adoption of a folk deity, as well as a representation in sculptures, has been has been a topic of studies in various articles and topics, but it gives us an idea exactly how such transitions work, and Hariti is one of the best examples for it. The same story is seen. I will not be discussing this due to lack of time, but it has already been discussed in the by its previous speaker. In the stories of Jarasandha, where we have Jara, who is the malevolent deity. She is basically the Rakshashi, who would be kind of combining the halves of the body. So it's a similar story that we have there. We have Sitala, who is again the goddess of epidemics, the protector of children, and we are praying to her for luck and fertility. In the Jaina context, we have Bahuputrika as well as a form of Ambika Devi, where again the iconography is very similar, where we have while we have Ambika with a small child and like a other child and the mango leaf, we have Hariti with the cornucopia, the child, or citrus. Um, in Vishakhapatnam, there is of course the Rukamma, which is again giving an idea about how in both religions, Hinduism and Buddhism, we have this fluid network of these folk deities, these concepts spreading. It is not something restricted or stuck with a certain religion. And we have the same story being revised and seen in different regions. Um, the temple of Hariti at Shambhunath in Kathmandu is still active, where people make donations, and there are these women healers who refer to themselves as Ajima or the grandmothers who are taking part or performing as the daughters and granddaughters of Hariti and helping in the processes of childbirth, infertility issues, and illnesses of children. And this is exactly the people who would have been part of the cult of Hariti initially. These are these marginalized people who continue to be marginalized even in this period. The fact that she was this cannibalistic figure is actually highlighting her marginalized forms and her um, portrayal as a demon who is attacking women in childbirth, who is attacking young child and devouring them, is actually talking about these internal or this main fear which was present in those areas, in those times of related to childbirth, related to fertility. It is basically a symbol. It is basically addressing the vulnerabilities which are related to pregnancy, related to birth of children, to infant mortality, and they are being depicted through through that of a demon, depicted through that of a goddess later on, who are protecting them from the same. So the risk of this illness, of this death, and dangers of these are being then reflected through Hariti, Sridala, Manasa, etc. These people who were at the margins are also people who continue even today to be in the margins, because religion, be it Buddhism, Hinduism, or even modern uh, texts or modern ideas, concepts, society still looks at these ideas, these kind of functions, as that of pollution, or a question of purity comes in. So people like midwives who are helping people that I mentioned are like Ajimma, who are the granddaughters or grandmothers in of Hariti, are actually performing a work of pollution, and so they are being demarcated to the margins, and they cannot be part of the mainstream, and they cannot be part of the main pantheon. Um, Quickly, I'll just mention a few kind of Hariti sculptures. Shows her popularity does not just stay in Gandhar, just stay in northern India, but it actually spreads to Southeast Asia as well. It's one of the routes basically that Ising is mentioning, the maritime route through which it's reaching China, which I assume we have a speaker tomorrow. We'll be highlighting on that. So these are a few sculptures we are finding of Hariti in Thailand. Sculptures are ranging from 5th century onwards till 15th century, with both Hariti and Panchashika or singular Hariti. Sculptures in Phimai especially, which is an important temple, which has Hariti and Panchashika at its gate. Most of these sculptures are from Indonesia, again ranging from early 5th, 6th century to this particular image, which is from the 9th century Borobudur. We have other temples which are referring to again Hariti with Panchashika, Adiyogakarta, Hariti with a child, following the Indian style of the iconography. And the island of Bali, we still have a modern shrine at the cave temple of Guakarcha, where still offerings are made for fertility, like for blessings for fertility. And these skulls have continued with similar iconography that we have seen in case of late Mathura, as well as later period in Bengal as well. In East Java, the spread of Hariti was a bit late, but it still flourished, at least in the from the 10th century onwards. And we have under the Mahajapit kingdom a lot of Hariti sculptures coming up, which is interesting because we find an interesting folklore, basically, in the regions of Kedah and the region of Mahajapit, where we have figures like these, which are referred to as Ben Brayut. They are basically these poor people. They're referred to as hardworking weavers who have multiple children that they have to feed, which is why they are poor. They have, in certain instances, 18 kids, in certain more. So they are prayut, meaning just a family who is burdened with a lot of children. So they are versions of Panchashika and Hariti with multiple children. And later on, when Buddhism is flourishing in the region, the name Brayuts being replaced by Hariti and Panchashika itself. And we have the same like idea of a mother goddess, of her figure as goddess with child being represented even in the modern period. And this continues with the most popular mythology, which is present, that of Rangda, where we are going back to the demonic story, where we saw the transition to a benevolent goddess. Now we are going back to that of a demon, where she is the queen of the witches. She is a legendary witch who is doing black magic. And we have another counterpart who is coming up that is fighting with her, who is spending its days mm, kind of battling each other between good and evil. And that is quintessentially what Buddhism is talking about, how knowledge will be helping you move from the darker sides towards the good, towards the light, towards the enlightenment. It's this figure of Rangda, which is basically referred or identified with the Princess of Java, Mahendra Datta. And this again brings back the question of marginality of women, who where she was supposed to have divorced the king, and that made her a marginalized person, a person who was no longer a part of the mainstream society. And we have then the main hero of the story, which is Barong, who is then part of the mainstream religion. And it's their contestations which are being reflected. So my conclusion is that it's through Hariti that we are seeing a transition. We are seeing the main story of the fact that men and women were allowed to bring to make efforts to bring an end to the suffering, to bring a change in their lifestyles, to bring a change to move towards salvation, basically, and to take the right actions towards them. And in doing so, in the cult of Hariti, as we see in Nepal, as we see in the case of Rangda mythology, these kind of marginalized people, these peripheral men, women, they are making these attempts to become part of the mainstream, become part of the main society, and they no longer um, are being pushed away. And it's in through the inclusion of Hariti as a main goddess, we see the religion, at least in that initial phase, being willing to bring them into the folds. I'll stop here. Thank you so much.